Today's topic is unlocking the book of Daniel. We're going to look at some of the more difficult passages found in chapter 11, and we'll start with verse 14. These are passages that are widely misinterpreted by futurists that push everything into the distant future. And again, as I mentioned in the last video on Daniel, the historic church always regarded prophecies, and especially the ones in the book of Daniel and Revelation, as events in history, things that were confirmed because they had already happened. Now, there were some things, obviously, that hadn't happened, but they looked back down the corridor of time and could confirm events that happened. Now, this is way more solid and sensible than guessing about something that hasn't happened. And so it's called the historicist view, or historicist interpretation. And that's the interpretation that I think is correct. Now, verse 14 deals with northern alliances and civil unrest. It reads, "And in those times there shall be many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. When Ptolemy Euergetes died, his son, a minor, inherited the throne. The kings of the north saw this as a weakness, and formed alliances with each other, and proceeded to take parts of the southern kingdom and divide it among themselves. Also there were Egyptians that sought to take Egypt from the young king. This caused much unrest in the land, and fomented crime. Also further north, though still part of the southern kingdom, many took advantage of the disturbances in the south, and spoiled and robbed, having little regard for the law." And so we can see the many kings that stood up, those were the kings of the north. And they stood up against the king of the south, who was a minor. And they saw that as an opportunity, and it created civil unrest. Thus the term, "robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves." Verse 15 speaks of the king of the north. It reads, "So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount, and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand." The term "cast up a mount" refers to setting siege towers and battering engines against the walls of fortified cities. With these, the kings of the armies could scale high walls and knock holes in them. This king, being Antiochus, was unstoppable, and he succeeded in taking most of the fortified cities in Coele and Phoenicia. Additionally, Antiochus took Jordan and Samaria, where the Jews voluntarily surrendered. Verse 16 speaks of Judea subdued. It reads, "But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land which is by his hand shall be consumed." The glorious land is Judea, which Antiochus took with little resistance from the Jews. Because the Jews readily submitted and cooperated with Antiochus, providing him with horses and elephants, they received more favors, and the land was not ravaged to the degree of some of the other regions. Verse 17 speaks of alliances with Egypt. It reads, "He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither before him." Desiring to conquer the entire kingdom of Egypt, Antiochus concocted a strategy to mount a siege and muster a significant army by which to accomplish this. Apparently many Jews, called by Daniel the upright ones, were favorably disposed toward Antiochus and joined his expedition to conquer Egypt. Finding he could not take Egypt by force, for it was under the protection of the Romans, offered his daughter Cleopatra in marriage to the king of Egypt. This was intended to forge a peace treaty and an alliance. Here Daniel refers to Cleopatra as the daughter of women, given her great beauty. However, once married to the king of Egypt, she sided with him and not her father. Thus the scripture says, "She shall not stand on his side, neither before him." That is, she will not stand for her father, and she shall neither be for him. That's what this verse is talking about. Verse 18 talks about conquering the isles. It reads, "After this shall he turn his face to the isles, and shall take many, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease without his own reproach. He shall cause it to turn upon him." Dissatisfied with attempts at subduing Egypt, Antiochus turned his efforts toward the islands and the coastal cities of the Aegean Sea. The scripture often refers to such cities as isles. Having taken a number of Roman jurisdictions, he invoked their wrath and their reproach, and the reproach he had hoped to bring on them was turned back on him. Antiochus suffered defeats by the Roman armies, having his ships sunk and losing many thousands of soldiers. Eventually, in total defeat, to establish peace, the Romans demanded Antiochus pay for all their expenses of war, and he agreed. Verse number 19 deals with defeat of the northern kings. It reads, "Then he shall turn his face towards the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall, and not be found." Suffering defeat at the hands of the Roman armies, Antiochus the Great fled to the more remote parts of his kingdom. Apparently he was having difficulty paying his debt to Rome, so he planned to rob the temple of Jupiter, but the plot got discovered, and he was slain by the inhabitants of the area. Thus he never returned to Syria, his homeland, rather died in the province of Elymas, where he was buried. The site of his grave is unknown. And so that correlates with him stumbling, falling, and not being found. That is, his grave is not found. Nobody knows where he fell and was buried. Let's leave it there. If you like this and you're interested in studying the book of Daniel from the perspective of the historic church, then you can get my commentary at thebookpatch.com, and I'll leave the link somewhere here on this video and below. Thank you for listening.